So we are literally going to move everything